About to
There.
now. Okay. Muy buenas tardes. Siendo las 18 horas, les saluda el profesor Cristian Cristóforo Capini, coordinador del Departamento de Inglés del Instituto Superior de Lenguas, en calidad de moderador. Se da inicio a la defensa virtual de tesina, acorde a la resolución número 528/2021, que fija fecha y hora de la tesina con el título Teacher Efficacy and its Influence on a Teacher's Willingness to Differentiate Instruction, a cargo de las autoras Bethsabe, Derene, Gonzalez y Fatima Romina Gómez, Verdina, de la carrera Licenciatura en Lengua Inglesa del Instituto Superior de Lenguas. El día de hoy, viernes 4 de junio del 2021, nos acompaña la profesora María Rosa Ortiz en calidad de presidente del Tribunal Examinador. Muy buenas tardes, profesora.
Buenas tardes, profesor. Buenas tardes, alumnas.
Buenas tardes.
En calidad de miembros del Tribunal Examinador, las profesoras Elena Núñez y Carolina Ortiz. Muy buenas tardes, profesora.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Bienvenida. Postulantes universitarias, muy buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo están?
Estamos muy bien y estamos muy emocionados por la defensa de hoy. Entonces, qué bueno. Para dar inicio, entonces, queda a cargo el manejo del desarrollo de la defensa con la presidente de mesa, la profesora Rosa Ortiz.
¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes. Bueno, antes de iniciar la defensa, les quiero recordar que tienen 30 minutos para presentar su tesina, y al terminar la defensa, los miembros del tribunal van a hacer las preguntas. Durante el momento en que ustedes estén presentando, nosotros vamos a tener los micrófonos apagados y vamos a volver a iniciar, utilizar los micrófonos al culminar la defensa. Pueden iniciar ahora.
Well, thank you, Ms. Rosa, and thank you everyone for being here. Before we begin, we would like to take a moment to remember Mr. Camps as the wonderful and joyous human that he was. We will miss him.
And to honor his memory and all the knowledge he passed on to us, we would like to dedicate this dissertation to him.
The role of teachers and students has evolved. Nowadays, teachers have the task to guide, mentor, and monitor education. Students are seen as unique individuals with their own characteristics and needs. And out of all the educational frameworks that address this idea of learning, differentiated instruction caught our attention.
When one thinks of the term differentiated instruction, a lot of definitions and also thoughts come to mind. Now, it's important to understand that differentiated instruction is not individualized instruction, and neither is aimed to only accommodate students with special needs, but it's a philosophy of education that seeks to provide methods and tools so all learners can learn in a classroom. In a differentiated classroom, the teacher proactively plans, carries out varied approaches to content, process, and product, meaning that all the activities in a classroom are built upon the students' similarities as well as their differences. One of the main characteristics of differentiated instruction are its multiple approaches towards teaching and also learning. The content, the process, and the product are viewed through different eyes because they are viewed in accordance to what guides their students, their readiness, their interest, and their learning profile. And there is a special emphasis put on readiness because this aspect changes throughout a course, so the teacher should be able to make the necessary adjustments in order to provide academic student growth for the students. We can also say that differentiated instruction is organic. This has to do with the fact that learning occurs from both sides. Students and teachers are in constant learning from each other. We remember that Vygotsky already spoke about social constructivism and the fact that social interaction allows for the construction of knowledge. Well, differentiated instructions goes farther on this. And in a differentiated classroom, not only the teachers are learning or the students, sorry, are learning from their teachers, but also the teachers are learning about their students and their learning process. And by doing this, they make differentiated instruction a way of life in the classroom. Carol Ann Tomlinson is one of the main authors of this philosophy of education. And she says that learning takes place most effectively in classroom where the knowledge is clearly and also powerfully organized, where the students are highly active in their learning process and the assessments are rich and varied. The students then feel a sense of safety and connection. And teachers who have this in mind are able to develop different methodologies in the classroom and also different strategies in order to provide an environment where all the students' needs are met. So in a differentiated classroom, we can say that the teacher provides the tools so all the students can feel comfortable with their own learning process.
The 21st century teachers are surrounded by expectations. The teacher who differentiates instruction becomes a multitasker because they need to manage and monitor different activities simultaneously, as well as provide information in different ways to reach all the learners. In this way, the method differentiated instruction invites teachers to think of a wide variety of activities that can reach most learners without reaching a point where frustration may arise. Also, professional development is a crucial and ongoing component in teaching because having the pedagogical knowledge will allow the teacher to feel more comfortable in their classroom. And as we mentioned before, teachers, like their students, are in a state of constant learning.
Efficacy is another important term for this research project. It has to do with the fact that teachers are human beings, and each human being is unique and has feeling. An unhappy person might have a negative perception about themselves and about their performance in life and in their workplace, and this may affect how efficient they are on a task. So, in this case, self-efficacy plays an important role. But what is self-efficacy? This term was proposed by Robert Bandura. He said that it consists on a person's beliefs about their capabilities to produce effects, meaning that someone who has a high sense of self-efficacy enhances their accomplishment and can overcome different challenges. A person who believes on their own abilities, Bandura says, is more likely to reach their goals. This is contrary to people who doubt their abilities because they normally tend to avoid tasks because they see those tasks as threats.
So we asked ourselves, why does self-efficacy matter? And it matters because a person's self-confidence plays a key role on how they approach certain goals, tasks, and challenges. An educator who believes in their ability is more likely to try these new challenges, explore new methodology, and even apply new ideas in their classroom without the fear of failure. And mentioning Bandura, he proposed 4 sources of self-efficacy. The first source is experiencing success that requires effort. This will develop a resilient sense of self-efficacy, and it can be achieved by breaking tasks into smaller parts. As we succeed in these smaller tasks, we will foster the motivation to keep going. The second source of self-efficacy is seeing others succeed. We know teaching is a job better done with the support of other educators. And this is important because we see others like ourselves achieving success. It will foster the feeling, if you can do it, I can do it too. Another source of self-efficacy is receiving specific encouragement. When we know our efforts are being acknowledged, it pushes us harder to succeed. And the final source of self-efficacy is managing negative emotions. Uncontrolled emotions might be the source of anxiety and stress, and being able to understand that these feelings are not an indicator of failure. It is an important step to adapt to challenges and set goals. So when we consider all of these sources of self-efficacy, we can say that it matters because it leads to positive decision-making and positive changes.
And differentiated instruction requires effort, hard work, and trial and error from the teachers. In order for them to reach all their students' needs, it's important that they feel confident about their abilities in order to apply the methods that are necessary for their students, and also they should be resilient because sometimes the effort they make may go wrong. So we can say that self-efficacy and differentiated instruction are related because a teacher who believes on their own capabilities is an educator that has a high sense of self-efficacy. It's someone willing to try new things and methods in order to go farther and provide the best opportunities for their students. It's also a person willing to learn from their own mistakes and not feel discouraged by them. On the other hand, a teacher who has a low sense of teacher self-efficacy might believe they have no time to adjust a lesson, or even might think of all the ways these adjustments may go wrong. So the effort that they require to provide a differentiated lesson might be too overwhelming for them. And although they understand the theory behind differentiated instruction and also their students' need, their low sense of self-efficacy prevents them from putting this into practice. So all in all, we can say that teachers who show self-efficacy are able to take risks and also works towards improving their practices. And this is essential to help all their students in a classroom. And also this can help them apply methods such as differentiated instruction.
So as teachers, we sometimes find ourselves addressing the average level student. But as we know, in a classroom, there are students of many levels. And for this reason, a mixed ability classroom has a need for differentiated instruction, considering that what works for some students might not work for others. In the current Paraguayan educational context, teachers sometimes struggle to find the tools to address a mixed ability setting and tend to go back to traditional practices. So with this study, we seek to find if a teacher's sense of self-efficacy plays a determinant role when differentiating instruction, and we also want to understand the educator's opinions on the method. Differentiating is a decision that we as teachers make. If we do not feel capable, we might not apply the method.
Now, moving on to the purpose of our study, we put as the main purpose to explore if the sense of self-efficacy plays a role in the application of differentiated instruction. And likewise, we sought to find other aspects that also influence the use of differentiated instruction in a classroom. We set two main objectives. The first one was to identify if a teacher's sense of self-efficacy is a relevant factor at the time of deciding whether or not to differentiate. And the second was about finding other aspects aside from the sense of self-efficacy that also play a role when the teachers decide to put this method into practice. So considering the theory about differentiated instruction and also self-efficacy, the problem and also the purpose and the objectives, we raise these as our main research question. Does a teacher's sense of self-efficacy influence his or her willingness to differentiate instruction in a mixed ability classroom? We also raised 4 other questions that help us understand the main one. The first one had to do with the years of experience the teachers had and how that affects their sense of self-efficacy. The second one was about teachers' professional development on differentiated instruction and if this influenced their sense of self-efficacy. The third question was about the activities and tasks that teachers use the most in order to differentiate instruction and also how often they use them. And finally, we asked about the challenges teachers encounter when they try to apply differentiated instruction in a classroom.
For the methods portion, we adapted our research from the case study Differentiated Instruction, Professional Development, and Teacher Efficacy by Felicia Dixon and her colleagues. We developed the project to fit the Paraguayan educational context and focused on teacher efficacy related to the application of differentiated instruction in the classroom. We decided to use a mixed method research approach, and we chose this approach because it allows us to understand the problem qualitatively as well as to explain it through numbers and charts.
Regarding the setting for this study, we chose teachers from 2 different institutions. Both were private bilingual schools in Asunción, and we chose them because they both claim to differentiate instruction in all their elementary levels. Regarding the participants, we selected a total of 22 teachers, and we did this through purposeful sampling. We examined the instruments, and we selected a population that was able to provide information that was going to be relevant for our study. We also took into account their teaching level, which went from kindergarten to 6th grade, and the fact that they were all ESL teachers, English as a second language teachers. We chose 4 educators out of these 22 to make qualitative interviews. We asked questions based on the questionnaires that they already completed, and their answers gave us more details about what they think.
So we collected data by using 2 different instruments. The questionnaire with qualitative components that focused on differentiated instruction. And we also gave them a quantitative scale related to personal and teacher's sense of self-efficacy. And the participants were asked to complete both instruments on the same day. To analyze the qualitative data, we applied coding procedures. And to analyze the quantitative scales, we assigned a score for each question that went from 0 to 5 points. The personal efficacy scale had a total of 60 points, and the teacher efficacy scale had a total of 40 points.
We'll now present our findings, and we are going to start with the quantitative findings. The following tables show us percentage distributions of the questions that were not part of the scale. The first question was, how many years have you taught? And we can see here that 36% of the teachers have been working on the field from 1 to 5 years. 23% of them have been teaching from 6 to 10 years, and the majority of them, 41%, have been working as teachers for more than 10 years. So it's safe to say that the population consists of mostly experienced teachers.
We introduced a topic of mixed ability with the question, do you have mixed ability students in your classroom? And out of the 22 participants, 36% said no, that they don't have mixed ability students, but 64% said yes. So this shows us that the majority of the educators that we chose for the study face the challenge of mixed ability students in their classes.
We also asked about professional development to address differentiated instruction. We can see that only 14% of the teachers had never had professional development on the topic, but 64% had had it in the last 5 years. Finally, 23% of the teachers said that they had professional development to address differentiated instruction in the year they completed this questionnaire.
We then asked them if they do differentiate instruction in their classroom. And out of the 22 teachers, 82% said yes, they do differentiate, and only 18% said no. So we can see in these results that most teachers have the ability to apply differentiated instruction in their classes.
And finally, we also asked about the challenges or difficulties they encounter when they apply differentiated instruction. We can see that only 9% of the teachers said that they don't find any challenges or difficulties, but 91% of them said yes, they find difficulties when applying this method. So we can say that the majority of the teachers find the application of differentiated instruction challenging for them.
The following bar graphs will provide information about the sense of self-efficacy of the participants. We divided the scales into personal efficacy and teacher efficacy to distinguish between how efficient they feel in their daily lives versus how efficient they feel specifically as teachers. So this first chart shows the level of personal efficacy. And as you can see, 21 out of 22 educators have a high sense of personal efficacy, and only 1 of them has a sense of personal efficacy in the medium range. So we can say that they feel efficient in their daily lives.
Now, the next one shows how they feel as teachers. The second part of the questionnaire or the scales were about teacher sense of self-efficacy. And in contrast with the previous one, here we can see fewer teachers in the medium to high spectrum of the bars. We can see that 7 out of the 22 teachers have a low sense of self-efficacy as teachers. 12 of them are in the medium sense of self-efficacy, and only 3 teachers feel a high sense of self-efficacy in their work as teachers. So this shows that, contrary to the previous one, teachers don't feel efficient enough in their jobs.
We decided that maybe we should combine scores from both scales in order to determine an overall sense of self-efficacy. And as we can see in the chart, out of the 22 participants, none have a low sense of self-efficacy, 13 have a medium sense of self-efficacy, and 9 have a high sense of self-efficacy. So this average shows that they all have a sense of self-efficacy that shouldn't be an obstacle when trying to differentiate instruction. Moving on to our qualitative findings, we wanted to see if there were other aspects that influence the use of differentiated instruction. And in order to analyze the qualitative data, we use coding procedures. The themes and codes that emerged were organized according to the supporting questions, and we found 3 main themes: tasks and activities, challenges, and frequency. The first category is tasks and activities that the teachers use whenever they differentiate. And these exercises show how committed they are to applying the method. By explaining these tasks and activities, they gave us a more clear idea of how they perceive differentiation and the way they approach it.
One of the codes that unfolded under tasks and activities was the use of technology and also resources. Here we find videos, songs, games, and the use of computers that teachers use the most to support the understanding of the lesson and also to enhance learning from their students. One of the teachers in the interview mentioned that the institution provides them with the books and also the online resources they use to differentiate. Another code that we found was teacher-student time. Under this code, we set extra activities, outside class time, one-on-one tasks, and also communication with parents. Now, teachers use this strategy in order to enhance their students' confidence, their abilities, but also to have a notion of how much they understood the lesson. This can be seen on what these teachers said, that certain activities they do are with guidance of the teacher or guidance of the teacher aide.
Another strategy mentioned is classroom management. And technically, classroom management is not a differentiated instruction technique. We noticed that in some cases, it helps the teachers in their classroom. According to an educator, seating arrangement is a helpful tool when conducting leveled activities. And when we speak of leveled activities, tiered lessons is the most common technique used by educators whenever they differentiate. These tiered lessons include activities such as group work, TPR, working in centers, debating, and even providing extra time when students need it. One teacher said that I do specific skilled group work. We work with concrete materials to address specific concepts, skills, and learning styles. Another code that emerged is the challenges. The challenges that teachers encounter when trying to apply differentiated instruction. When we were dividing the challenges into specific categories, we noticed that some of them are difficulties that the teacher can solve on their own, but other challenges, their solutions are out of their reach. So this led us to divide the challenges into dependent of the teacher and independent of the teacher.
Among the challenges that we thought were dependent of the teacher, we can find lack of time, the student's perception of themselves, and also the lack of professional development. And the ones that they mentioned recurrently were lack of time and lack of professional development. We noticed that teachers normally have a heavy workload, and this combined to the superficial knowledge a lot of them had of differentiated instruction was the most challenging part when they tried to apply this in their classroom. One of the educators mentioned in the interviews that it is difficult because I did not have specific training on it, so I really don't know what to do. Another one mentioned that it takes a lot of time to plan with differentiated instruction.
When we talk about the challenges that are independent of the teachers, the ones that were repeated the most are lack of time, curriculum length, class size, and parent support and understanding. We decided to include lack of time in both categories because regardless of how organized a teacher is, they are still expected to cover a lengthy curriculum. And this lengthy curriculum is sometimes not compatible with differentiated instruction. Also, some teachers said that having a large number of students per class is a challenge. One stated that the number of students per classroom is very challenging, and I cannot assist them personally all at the same time. An unpredicted challenge that we found is the lack of parent support. One of the teachers said a frustrating aspect is the lack of comprehension from the family. Parents do not understand how the learning process is.
Now, the third main code we found was the frequency in which the teachers apply differentiated instruction. We divided this into daily, once per week, less than once per week, and never. Most of the teachers said to differentiate daily or less than once per week. And fewer teachers mentioned that they try to do it once per week, but some of them say they never differentiate. And the main reason, as one of the teachers mentioned, was that differentiating takes a lot of time, a lot of paperwork, and the curriculum is very strong and strict. Now, moving on to the discussion section. First, we are going to provide the answer to the subsequent questions we ask, and then we will give the answer to our main research question. The first one was, does a teacher's years of expertise influence their sense of self-efficacy? Now, in order to have a good answer for this, I need to point out that feeling confident on a task has a lot to do with the experience a person has. And we ask this in order to expect a relation maybe between the years of self-efficacy and the years of expertise they had. I'm sorry. Now, the charts show that the majority of our teachers are experienced teachers. So we can infer that they have been applying a lot of methods for a while. Bandura explains that mastering experiences is a good way to create a high sense of self-efficacy. So we can say that the most experienced teacher, the higher their sense of self-efficacy. Now, when we compare both results, the years of expertise and the teacher's sense of self-efficacy, we can see that in average, they only have a medium sense of self-efficacy. So their years of expertise does not really influence this.
Another subsequent question we had is, how does a teacher's professional development on differentiated instruction influence their sense of self-efficacy? We agree teachers should be constant learners, and professional development is the best tool they have to acquire new knowledge, solve problems, and even improve their practices. Professional development opportunities influence teachers in a positive way, and this might lead to high levels of teacher self-efficacy. The interviews show that in some cases, the opportunities for development were not provided by the institutions, but were the teachers the ones that went out looking for them. Because self-efficacy determines how we motivate ourselves and behave, we may infer that by looking for opportunities for growth, there must be a high sense of self-efficacy.
Now, the next question was about the tasks and activities that teachers use to differentiate instruction. We asked this in order to know if teachers apply this method in their classes. We found that the activities they use the most are working in centers and also group work. But we also noticed that they do this based on different characteristics, but not always as differentiated instruction says. That you should provide these centers or group works by taking into account the student's readiness or their learning profile, as we mentioned before. So although they do use centers and group works, they don't do it as differentiated instruction suggests. And regarding the frequency in which they differentiate, most of the teachers say they do it daily or less than once per week.
We then move on to wonder, what are some challenges teachers encounter when trying to apply differentiated instruction in a mixed ability classroom? We thought the main obstacle would be the teacher's sense of self-efficacy, but after analyzing the data, challenges such as lack of time, professional development, long curriculum, and others influence the decision to apply differentiated instruction. So the challenges show that the application of the method goes beyond the mere sense of self-efficacy and has a lot to do with the obstacles the educators experience in their daily practices.
Now, moving on to our main research question. Does a teacher's sense of self-efficacy influence his or her willingness to differentiate instruction in a mixed ability classroom? Now, we need to remember that differentiated instruction seeks to address all students in a classroom, and the role of the teacher is fundamental for this to happen because they provide the planning and also the environment for it. This requires effort and time, so having a high sense of self-efficacy should be an intrinsic characteristic of a teacher. Dixon and colleagues, they believe that teacher self-efficacy might influence the application of differentiated instruction. Now, we took their question or their statement into account, and we raised this question based on our educational context. And after we analyzed both qualitative and quantitative data, we noted that the sense of self-efficacy does not really play a decisive role when teachers apply differentiated instruction.
So to conclude, self-efficacy is not the determinant reason for English teachers from two bilingual schools in Asunción to decide whether to apply the method or not. They mentioned other aspects that pose as obstacles for them, and through the mixed method analysis, we concluded that the challenges are the main reasons for the teachers not to differentiate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Now we're going to ask some questions.
Okay.
So who wants to start?
Okay, so I'm going to start if you don't mind. Well, it was a pleasure. First of all, it was a pleasure to listen to you both talk about your topic with such passion. It was great. So I truly appreciate that, and I also appreciate the fact that you remembered our dear Mr. Camps. I'm pretty sure that he's very happy with what you have shared with us, because one of the phrases that he would say the most is that the effective teacher has to be effective first. So yeah, I did feel a lot of love in your presentation. So I just wanted to point that out.
You're going to make us cry.
That was not my intention. So now to the question. After you finished your research, what other questions bounced or were left in the air? You were able to answer your research questions, right? But most likely research, even though you have clear research objectives, once you're done, other questions arise. Did you have that experience? And if you did, what were these questions?
Fatih, if you want, I can start.
Sure, go ahead and I'll continue.
Personally, it did raise the question of how do we encourage teachers to go out there and learn more about differentiated instruction, because I noticed, and I think Fatima will agree, that it's a surface knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? The knowledge of differentiated instruction or taking it into practice should have a better or deeper foundation. And because of all the challenges that they mentioned, we were like, maybe they don't go out looking for more professional development because they don't have time to do it. So what can we do to provide this deeper knowledge of differentiated instruction to make it more applicable in their daily lives?
And adding to what Betsy said, not only, what we can do to help the institutions also, because we heard a lot of the school makes us complete the curriculum and it's very long, so we don't have time to apply extra activities. So also I think the institutions play a really big role on this. So also they need to realize that applying different methods that actually allow students for a better learning is not, to say it fast, a waste of time, but it's actually good for the teachers to learn about it and for the students to learn better.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Have you considered doing a similar survey with public school system?
That would be very interesting.
Yes,
We
we
actually,
did.
yeah.
We did. We actually thought that maybe, um, for starters, maybe our sample was limited. It was only 22 educators from schools that have another reality,
Mhm.
Hmm.
sort of. And we wonder, like, how are they doing it in public schools?
Yeah,
Because
Yeah,
because they
maybe
do have
some, yes,
multi
and
we
multi
actually,
sometimes,
yeah.
scenarios.
yeah, you would think that because it's a private bilingual school of certain levels, they would have more knowledge or more access to certain things. And we were wondering, it would be very interesting to do this in public schools and even with a
Yeah.
greater sample.
We actually had that conversation. Like when we were analyzing, we were like, "Oh my goodness, what would it be like if we do this in public schools?" Like we think that would be really interesting and also helpful.
And I
Yeah.
also wonder about self-efficacy of teachers in public school system. I also wonder about how aware they are of the multi effort that they do, um, based on the salary that they have and all the
Hmm.
scenario that they, because you can have information, but I wonder about how aware they are that they are actually at a very high level of willing, like, they have a lot
Yeah.
of willing, right? Now it covers lots of areas, right? But yeah, I wonder about this. I feel this study is like a beginning of
Yeah.
many future steps that you
Yes.
can do. And I really want to offer our platform of Paratiso, so that you can have access to other teachers that work in different scenarios, so
Wow.
we can contribute with
Thank
this
you.
if
That would be
you would like
wonderful.
to do a
Yeah.
further study on this,
Yes,
of
I
course.
would like to add something, Ricardo, to what you were saying. Not only the knowledge that other teachers might have on the topic, but also, like we were mentioning in our presentation, one of the sources of self-efficacy is having your efforts acknowledged, right? So, are they being acknowledged,
That's the question.
right?
Hmm.
Not only with a salary, but the coworkers, their bosses, are they being
Are you seen?
motivated
Are
to
you
do
seen?
more, right?
Yes.
And
Yes,
even the educational system, sometimes we feel that there are limits there too. So also that could be another thing that maybe doesn't help them feel a higher level of self-efficacy.
thank you, Mikanese.
Yeah, they know where they are standing.
Mikanese was
That's
very
good.
helpful.
I know. Rosa, do you have a question?
Yes, I actually wanted to comment. I mean, when you started talking about and asking the teachers how they felt about and their self-efficacy and the differentiated instruction, I wondered if they were familiar with the concept, if they really had like the concept of what that was, or they just pretended that they knew. And I mean, because I was evaluating my school, which is also a private school, and thinking about this because they ask us to have differentiated instruction, but sometimes we find ourselves like we don't know what that really is. Like we don't really have the concept, and we have to create a classroom with differentiated instruction. So
Hmm.
when you show that there were many people that said no, for example, like I wonder, and I wanted to know, how did you feel, if they really knew, or if they just like didn't want to really answer with the truth. I don't know. How did you feel when you were and like getting the information?
When we read the answers from the questionnaires and also in the interviews, we noted that the knowledge was very superficial. A lot of people sometimes think that differentiated instruction is working with students who have specific needs, but is not. Is working with the whole classroom and create a way to reach all the students despite of their learning difficulties or disabilities. So I think that a few teachers didn't really know what it was about, and they only thought it was providing For example, when you have a differentiated curriculum by the Ministerio and things similar to that with the ley of inclusión. So I can see that a few teachers thought that, but also other teachers knew what it was about.
Yes, I would like to add to what Fatima said that it's not only the teachers reaching all of the learners, but it's also the learners building on their peers' knowledge. You know, one student helping another learn. That's part of differentiation as well. And like Fatih said before, the ley de inclusión, or these teachers that maybe don't know, they think that they are differentiating because they have one student that is a little bit slower in their pace or maybe has another type of need. And in reality, is like we said, is reaching all the learners, regardless if they are gifted or not, is creating that environment that will promote learning. And I think whenever we decided on the topic, we kind of asked the teachers, like, do you know what this is? Like, have you been provided with information in your institution? Have you ever heard of the method? And based on that, we kind of navigated where and who was going to be part of the study.
And were the results expected? As expected, or you thought?
Actually, we compared it with did this based on another study, and in that study, the teacher sense of self-efficacy actually affected teachers when they tried to apply. So we expected similar results. So when we saw that the sense of self-efficacy does not play a decisive role, it also plays a role, but we noticed that it was actually the challenges that was actually very surprising for us.
Yes, and I think that whenever we got that result, we were like, maybe the teachers aren't aware of how they are feeling towards their jobs, and they are not aware because they don't have the time to be made aware of, right?
Self-autonomy.
Yes.
Lots of things, right? Because it's not only about inclusion of lower achievers, but also embracing the high achievers and
Yes.
giving them a chance to continue
To challenge them, to
challenging
encourage them.
themselves
Yes.
and to build autonomy so that they work with each other and they support each other and they encourage each other and they find ways to communicate, right? So yeah, it's very, very big.
Yes, I think it's like you said, Ricardo. This is probably like the baby or the baby step of something larger and something bigger that maybe, thinking far ahead will change the educational context that we're in.
And I think Miss Rosa's question adds to what Miss Elena said, what else we can do or what else we thought we could do, because providing professional development on differentiated instruction should be something that I think all institutions should do. But the real differentiated instruction, the one that actually gives you the tools and the theory so you can apply it in the classroom.
I wonder if the institutions, both schools where you applied your surveys and interviews, did they ask you for the results or somehow tried to find out what you found out, or they just gave you permission to conduct your research and that was it?
That was for me.
They at the school that I was in charge of, the principal asked to read the paper whenever we were done, just to see what came out, right? And we did it, like we said, we did it in an elementary level, and this principal asked me, like, maybe you can do it afterwards in middle school and high school to see if they are also differentiating, because differentiation does not end in 6th grade.
Okay. Right.
It continues, and it probably should continue even at a university level, because we all have different styles and different intelligences,
Different readiness.
And different readiness. So it's not just first grade through sixth grade, right? So they didn't really ask for the results, but they showed my side of the study showed an interest. But
One
not
of the
very
schools
urgent.
did, and one of the schools didn't, basically. So.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Miss
you for
A.
your question.
Okay. If there are no more questions, no. So we will ask Betsy and Fatima to leave the meeting for a moment so we can talk, and then we're going to tell you to come, Fatima and Betsabeth. The first time I call you like that, Betsabeth.
Yes.
Okay, so we were talking with Miss Elena and Miss Carol, and we all agree that we really like your presentation and that we really like your written work, and that you look very confident and when you were presenting. So, and your grade is a 5. Congratulations.
Thank you. We did it.
Now you are licenciadas and now we're all colleagues, right?
Yay.
Thank you so much. We are very excited.
We are very glad that you are in the teaching field. We are very, very glad because you care and you want to continue growing and you want to continue questioning, and we are very, very glad and proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Carol.
You
Thank you,
are now
everybody.
our colleagues. Can you
We are
imagine?
colleagues. And it
So
feels
proud of
great.
that. Yes.
Thank you so
of an
much.
Congrats,
era, but the
yes,
beginning of
congrats,
another.
congrats.
I mean, it's
Now we can have our bocaditos, right?
Yeah, now,
This is what now you're allowed to.
I can officially eat them.
If there are any left.
They are.
Okay, let me close it. Let me close it in Spanish. Stop recording, and then we can keep talking. Okay. Bueno, señoras y señores, damos por finalizada la defensa de tesis de las graduadas flamantes licenciadas Bethsabe, Derene y Fatima Gómez. Estamos muy felices con ellas. Les felicitamos y esto ha sido todo. Hasta luego.
Gracias.
Let me start recording now.